Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I'm going to leave the link to this video down below so you can watch it. It's about, 23 minutes long, and this is the ceremony where President Trump signed an executive order, but I want to go over that executive order with you, so bear with me here. And again, the link to this will also be down below, but it's called the Executive Order on Improving Free Inquiry, Transparency, and Accountability at Colleges and Universities. And he signed this back on March 21st. And so this particular thing, and he does explain it a little bit more in this video, and he has some of these are college students that have gone through some things that have had their free speech stifled, basically. And so he had them come up and talk about their situations. He told a little bit about those. Very interesting to hear. But what this essentially does is it allows the government to be able to monitor schools that are going to be receiving government funds and making sure that those colleges and universities that are getting money from our government are promoting free speech. And that's an important thing because we know how conservative speech is being stifled across the United States in many ways. And so this is one of the ways that he wants to even out the playing field a little bit more. And he says the purpose of this order is to enhance the quality of post-secondary education by making it more affordable, more transparent, and more accountable. Institutions of higher education institutions should be accountable both for student outcomes and for student life on campus. In particular, my administration seeks to promote free and open debate on college and university campuses. Free inquiry is an essential feature of our nation's democracy, and it promotes learning, scientific discovery, and economic prosperity. We must encourage institutions to appropriately account for this bedrock principle in their administration of student life and to avoid creating environments that stifle competing perspectives, thereby potentially impeding beneficial research and undermining learning. The financial burden of higher education on students and their families is also a national problem that needs immediate attention. Over the past 30 years, college tuition and fees have grown at more than twice the rate of the Consumer Price Index. Rising student loan debt, coupled with low repayment rates, threatens the financial health of both individuals and families, as well as of federal student loan programs. In addition, too many programs of study fail to prepare students for success in today's job market. The federal government can take meaningful steps to address these problems. Selecting an institution and course of study are important decisions for prospective students and significantly affect long-term earnings. Institutions should be transparent about the average earnings and loan repayment rates of former students who received federal student aid. Additionally, the federal government should make this information readily accessible to the public and to prospective students and their families in particular. In other words, he wants the federal government to provide the statistics and the information so when students are facing college, they can look at what their realistic prospect is for having that particular area of study as a major or minor. And so if they take that, then they can make a more informed decision as to whether it's worth it or not. Because if a college costs you $200,000, but you're realistically only going to make $20,000 a year with that particular job, it's just not going to be worth it. You're going to spend your entire life paying off that loan. You know, if you have a job that will maybe make you more money, then you can see that maybe that's a risk you can take. And that's one of the things that, you have to consider. I mean, people who are in professions where you have to have a lot of schooling, like doctors, they come out of med school with these huge debts. I mean, it's amazing what they have to go through. And they're spending so much of their monies when they first get going trying to pay off that loan. So this is something that he's trying to address here. Because it's not that people shouldn't be getting into college, but realistically, some people shouldn't. I mean, they should go to a trade school. That might be better for them, and it will give them the kind of career that they want and give them something that's a little more reasonable instead of building up all this debt for a college degree that you may or may not use. Like, for instance, I have a minor in classical culture. What do I do with it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. What can I do with it? I mean, really can't. There's nothing I can do with it, but hey, I wanted to take New Testament Greek and Latin, and by the time I got done, I only needed like 2 or 3 more classes, so I went ahead and got them. But, for me, it wasn't that much out of the way to get the degree. But for some others, they have degrees in things that, are they going to be able to get a decent job with that particular degree? That's the question, and it's something that we really need our student population to start thinking about. And the problem we have with colleges is that colleges want to make money. And because they want to make money, they want to get students in the college. And so to them, it's less important what degree the students choose as long as it's a degree that's going to bring in their money. So see, they want them to attend because they want to get the money from them, but they don't want to necessarily help them choose a career that's best for that student. Now, I can say when I went to college, I hated the advisors because they never were very helpful. They didn't understand. They told me that when I wanted to take 1 quarter, we were on quarters at the time, when I wanted to take 1 quarter and take Latin 101, Greek, at that time I was in New Testament Greek 103, I think, and Italian 101, German 101, and then my French class, they told me that was crazy to do, that I shouldn't do that. And it's like, okay, but I want to learn languages. I like languages. I wanted to have a little bit of lots of different languages. So that was one thing. I ignored their advice and I did what I wanted, and it was one of the best things I did. Another thing they told me I was crazy was because I had a French major, they told me I wanted to get a Spanish minor, and they told me again, you don't need a Spanish minor. You need to pair it up with English. You want to have an English minor if you're going to be teaching French. And it's like, no, I don't. I like teaching foreign languages. Well, now they're world languages. So, I wanted to do that. And they were trying to talk me out of it. Why? I have no idea why. But they did. Maybe it just wasn't lucrative enough. So, I was more of my own person when I was taking these classes. I didn't necessarily listen to them because I'd already had run-ins with my high school advisors, like the guy who said when I told him I wanted to take a typing class, he said, "Oh, you're going to be a teacher. You won't need typing." Yeah. So you never can tell, can you? I wanted to be a writer too, and so I wanted to have typing class. And boy, am I glad I did. That was back in the day when not everybody could type. And so in college, I actually made a little pocket money because I was typing people's papers for them because I knew how to type and they didn't. So anyway, this is one of the things that he's addressing here. President Trump wants to set it up so that instead of kids going into college kind of blind as to what their potential earnings are, and then, of course, how much they're actually going to end up paying on this loan, because most high school kids that are just getting ready for college aren't really thinking along those lines yet, and they need some guidance. So he tasked one of the organizations in the government to actually do this and to provide these statistics so parents and students can look at the information a little more logically and a little more objectively to see what's realistic for them. And that, I think, is very important. And it's going to take some of the pressure out because, like I said, with colleges, they want to get them in there and they're not so much worried about what the kid ends up doing. They just want to get the kid into the college so they can get the money from him for the tuition. I'm sorry, but that really is what most colleges are about. Now, maybe the private colleges are a little different on that, but most colleges are in it for making money. Otherwise, the people running the colleges wouldn't be making big salaries. So, anyway, this goes on, and he says, this order will promote greater access to critical information regarding the prices and outcomes of post-secondary education, thereby furthering the goals of the National Council for the American Worker established by Executive Order 13845 of July 19, 2018, establishing the President's National Council for the American Worker, because this is something to feed into our workforce. Instead of training a bunch of people who have degrees in absolutely nothing, or degrees in things that are not valuable for our workforce, what this does is it directs kids more into the jobs that are necessary, the jobs that are needed. So when they get out of college and they have this degree, there will be job openings for them instead of getting a degree in something else. Now, just because I'm not doing anything with my classical culture minor, it doesn't matter. Some people may be taking that and they could run with it. And I could have probably taught in some kind of, Christian school or a private school like that. I could have taught something about like mythology and maybe the basics of Latin and the basics of Greek and those kinds of things. But, it's one of those things that there probably are jobs out there for it, but not a lot. And so that's what he wants to establish here, so that there will be this information that is based on current statistics of what the workforce needs and what realistically these kids can expect to earn once they get a certain degree, and how that compares to how much money they're spending to do it. So I think this is a really good thing that he's doing here. And it just goes on, and it's things that the government's going to do. This is right here. The federal government is going to do these things to encourage institutions to foster environments that promote open, intellectually engaging, and diverse debate, including through compliance with the First Amendment for public institutions and compliance with stated institutional policies regarding freedom of speech for private institutions. Not only is he giving them this information so they can make better decisions, but he's tying it in to all of this money that goes from the federal government into these colleges to support their research and their other programs. And that's what's really going to be the big incentive here. Because he says down here, he wants it to align the incentives of institutions with those of students and taxpayers to ensure that institutions share the financial risk associated with federal student loan programs, help borrowers avoid defaulting on their federal student loans by educating them about risks, repayment obligations, and repayment options. See, this is what the schools are not doing, that they're not helping kids understand what happens after they get out of college. Once you get out of college and you've got this big loan hanging over your head, then what? And he wants to put more emphasis on the schools taking responsibility to educate students about this. And supplement efforts by states and institutions by disseminating information to assist students in completing their degrees faster and at lower cost. Now, we actually in Indiana had a governor, Mitch Daniels, who was very interested in education, and he and some other governors got together and they created something called the Western Governors College or University. I'm not sure the exact name, but it's a non-traditional type school where you can take everything online and you can do the work. Like if you're also working full time, this would be something that you could put in your extra hours to be able to complete a degree. And the cost is much, much less. So they did work together to do that. And I think that's probably where he's going on that. But this right here, Section 3, improving free inquiry on campus. This is the free speech part. To advance the policy described in subsection 2A of this order, the heads of covered agencies shall, in coordination with the Director of the Office Management and Budget, take appropriate steps in a manner consistent with applicable law, including the First Amendment, to ensure institutions that receive federal research or education grants promote free inquiry, including through compliance with all applicable federal laws, regulations, and policies. And then here are the covered agencies for that. Pretty much all the major ones there. And federal research or education grants for purposes of this section include all funding provided by a covered agency directly to an institution, but do not include funding associated with federal student aid programs that cover tuition fees or stipends. So in other words, it's not the money that the students are getting. This is the federal research or education grants. You see, a lot of colleges have these big grants that they use to do research, and that's where they fund a lot of the people who are doing their research at these different locations. So this is like hitting the colleges in one of their most vulnerable areas. I mean, this is genius, really, because it's like this is the same thing as the federal dollars to the states that are wanting to be sanctuary states. And Trump says, no, we're not going to give you money if you're going to be doing that. So this is the same kind of thing. And so he's saying, okay, you want the federal dollars. Well, if you want them, you're going to have to treat conservatives nicer. Essentially, that's what it is. And so all of the rest of this, that's what this is for. And he's setting a date on that by January 1st of 2020. They want to have this website set up so that it informs federal student loan borrowers of how much they owe, how much their monthly payment will be when they enter repayment, and available repayment options, how long each repayment option will take, and how to enroll in the repayment option that best serves their needs. So we talked about this in a previous video because one of the things that this big push towards college is doing, besides indoctrinating our kids, is it's setting them up to be in debt. And when you're in debt, you're in slavery. And that's what they really wanted to do. It's sad that these kids were being pushed into this situation, into some kind of college degree, you need college, without really pointing them in the direction that they needed to go, and without giving them the full information. And the full information would be these kinds of things. Can you repay it early? What are your options that are available? How much are you going to be paying every month? All of this information needs to be available to these kids so they can make a knowledgeable decision on this major thing in their life. And so that's what this particular one is about. Again, I will put the link down below. I just think it's brilliant that he's tying it to the research grants, because you don't know how many colleges are really caught up on these research grants. That's like their bread and butter. I mean, they really crave those because all of these college professors and everything need to have some kind of publishing credits. And in order to get their publishing credits, they need to be doing research. Well, if they're in this situation, they're not going to be able to start criticizing these conservatives and telling them that they are not allowed to speak their voice and yelling at people that have MAGA hats on and whatever the case is. It's going to curb a lot of that if they still want their money. And so I think he's going at it in a very logical and genius way, actually. So that's hitting them right in their money-loving hearts. Anyway, that's what I've got for you today on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I will see you all later.